In a fiery political media storm that's lighting up the internet, Karoline Leavitt, the fiery former Trump White House staffer and rising MAGA spokeswoman, erupted on national television following a bombshell segment by late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. During a scathing monologue on live TV, Kimmel didn't hold back, unleashing a blistering takedown of Donald Trump and his staunch ally, Senator J.D. Vance. With biting satire and shocking receipts, Kimmel peeled back the curtain on some of the most jaw-dropping allegations and contradictions surrounding the two GOP figures, sparking immediate backlash from the Trump camp. Leavitt, never one to stay silent, went on a tirade in response, calling the segment disgusting liberal propaganda, while defending Trump's economic legacy and attacking Kimmel's credibility. But the damage may already be done. As the segment continues to go viral, Americans are left wondering, was this just another late-night jab, or the start of a political unraveling? A plan or a gamble? One of the most frequently touted aspects of Trump's leadership was his supposed long-term vision, a grand economic plan that he had been executing all along. However, as the weeks wore on, it became increasingly clear that this plan was less about strategy and more about an improvisational approach to economic warfare. For all of Trump's talk about putting the world on notice and asserting America's dominance, the reality looked more like a series of knee-jerk reactions, one after another. In the eyes of his supporters, Trump's decisions might have been seen as bold moves to reassert American strength on the global stage, but to the rest of the world, they appeared reckless and unpredictable. Every announcement seemed to contradict the last, with tariffs bouncing around like the numbers in a bingo machine. The U.S. was slapping tariffs on Chinese goods, but then the numbers changed again. 20% one week, 100% the next. No one could predict where the game would go next, and even those closest to the administration were left trying to make sense of the erratic changes. China, in particular, felt the brunt of these swings. Trump's attempts to punish the Chinese government with tariffs were meant to force them into compliance. But what he underestimated was the power that China had over global supply chains. The tariffs were not just a tax on Chinese goods, but on American consumers and businesses that relied on cheap Chinese imports. While Trump continued to raise tariffs in an effort to get a better deal, the economy was already feeling the strain of these rising costs. For every dollar in tariffs imposed on China, American consumers were paying the price, often without realizing it. The toll on global markets. As Trump's trade war raged on, the consequences rippled across the globe. The $6 trillion loss wasn't just a number on a ledger. It represented real people, businesses, and economies all over the world reeling from the effects of unpredictable policy. The constant flux of tariffs, trade restrictions, and countermeasures led to a destabilized market, and countries that had once relied on the stability of global trade were left scrambling to mitigate the damage. Trump's trade war with China was one of the most high-profile aspects of his presidency, but it was hardly the only area where his economic decisions seemed more impulsive than strategic. The president's constant back and forth on tariffs, along with his unpredictable behavior, began to wear on international relations. Countries that had once viewed the U.S. as a stable economic partner were now unsure of what to expect. Could they rely on the U.S. to honor trade agreements? Would new tariffs be imposed at the drop of a hat? Even American businesses were uncertain about how to proceed. Companies that had operated with the understanding that global markets would remain open and free now found themselves caught in the crossfire of a trade war they hadn't signed up for. The costs of doing business were rising, and many feared that the long-term consequences of Trump's economic policies would stifle innovation and growth. The magic of the art of the deal. Despite the growing chaos, Trump remained steadfast in his belief that his decisions were part of a larger, grand strategy. This was the art of the deal, after all, a strategy that was meant to bring America to the negotiating table and secure better terms with foreign countries. Trump's repeated claims that the world needed the United States and that other nations were eager to strike deals only served to underscore his belief that he was in control. To him, every decision, no matter how seemingly erratic, was part of a master plan that would ultimately benefit the U.S. But what was the cost of this so-called strategy? The truth was, while Trump might have been playing the role of the negotiator-in-chief, the rest of the world saw the situation differently. For all his talk of economic leverage, Trump's decisions were often motivated by short-term gains rather than long-term solutions. The idea of using tariffs as a tool for leverage might have made sense in theory, but in practice, it alienated global allies and increased tensions with trade partners. The global economy was a finely balanced system, and Trump's decisions were throwing that balance out of whack. The toll on domestic politics. While the international community struggled to make sense of Trump's trade policies, the domestic political landscape was also starting to feel the strain. The president's aggressive stance on tariffs had led to a rise in consumer prices, and as the cost of everyday goods continued to climb, American families were beginning to feel the pinch. For many, the promises of America First and economic prosperity were starting to ring hollow. Instead of seeing wages rise and jobs return, they were facing higher prices at the grocery store and in other key areas of daily life. Moreover, Trump's rhetoric about fair trade and bringing jobs back to America often seemed disconnected from the realities of the marketplace. It was easy to say that tariffs would force foreign companies to pay their fair share, but the reality was that it was often American consumers who ended up footing the bill. Importers, not foreign companies, bore the brunt of the tariffs, and those costs were passed down the chain to consumers. Trump's efforts to fix the economy through tariffs and trade wars were starting to resemble a bad sales pitch, one that promised the world but ultimately delivered very little. His focus on tariffs seemed less about creating a thriving economy and more about winning a political battle. The promised riches from tariffs never materialized, and instead, what we were left with was a tattered global reputation and a fragile economy on the brink of instability. The shower debate and the stormy effect. Amid the economic chaos, there were moments that felt almost comical in their absurdity. For all the political and economic turmoil, Trump couldn't help but focus on trivial issues that seemed far removed from the global crises at hand. Take, for example, his infamous obsession with shower heads. During a public appearance, Trump ranted about how the water pressure in showers was insufficient, claiming it was a major national issue that needed to be fixed. In the midst of a trade war that was costing billions, Trump was fixated on how much water came out of his shower head. This strange focus on the minutiae of daily life seemed to reflect Trump's broader approach to leadership. While the world grappled with the fallout from his economic decisions, the president appeared more concerned with symbolic issues than with tangible results. The showerhead debate, which seemed trivial at best, became emblematic of his administration's tendency to fixate on peripheral issues, while the larger problems went unaddressed. But it wasn't just the showerhead that garnered attention. There was also the ongoing drama surrounding Stormy Daniels, the adult film actress with whom Trump allegedly had an affair. As the political climate grew ever more heated, Stormy's story became yet another twist in the bizarre political narrative of the Trump era. Just like the showerhead debates, the Stormy scandal seemed to distract from the far more serious issues facing the nation and the world. But in the circus that was the Trump presidency, nothing was ever quite as it seemed. Every issue, no matter how small, became part of the larger spectacle that kept the world watching. A global play with no clear endgame. In the end, it became apparent that what we were witnessing was not so much a well-executed plan, but a grand performance. The constant changes in tariffs, the dramatic shifts in rhetoric, and the focus on non-issues like showerheads and Stormy Daniels made it seem like Trump was less interested in running a government than in staging a show. His presidency had become a political reality show where the lines between strategy and spectacle were deliberately blurred. But while the show continued, the consequences of Trump's policies were being felt all around the world. The global market was reeling from the unpredictability of his economic decisions, and countries were left scrambling to adjust to the ever-changing landscape he had created. For many, it was a game they didn't sign up for, and one they had no choice but to play. As the world watched this political drama unfold, it became clear that while Trump may have thought he was in control, he was, in fact, leading the country and the world into an uncertain future. The art of the deal may have worked for him in business, but in the complex, interconnected world of global politics and economics, his chaotic, unpredictable approach was doing more harm than good. And while he continued to spin his narrative, the rest of the world was left to pick up the pieces.